This isn't always the greatest way to think about things, but it is one way to think about it in the off season when you've got 9 months to go, or what is it, 6 months to go before Georgia plays a football game that matters. They'll play G Day in about a week from the time that you're watching this. It says your reminder that I'll be on Clayton Street in Athens at UGA Red Zone signing editions of Dogstruction. You can either bring yours, buy one there, or just come by and say hello. If you're a subscriber at Dog Post, you know where I'll be after that. But the question really is, what is the margin of error for Georgia coming into this 2022 season? And that's a good question because um, after you've won a national championship, there are a lot of excuses that are made for you, a lot of explanations as to why you should be in the Final Four. It's what we saw from Clemson in 2017 when they just got their ass whipped by Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. They should have been in there. They were the 1 seed and got absolutely destroyed. A year later, we saw Alabama get in, should have been in. But in neither of those cases had they should have been not locked out. But my global point here is that after you win it all, you do get bonus points for things that happened the year before that has nothing to do with this year. So, what is the landscape for Georgia? We've talked a lot, and we've got a What We Were Hearing coming on Sunday at Georgia, where I talk with a college football insider and someone who's been around the sport and I've known for a long time and really trust about the landscape. But when you look at Georgia's 2022 season, there don't seem to be a lot of pitfalls. They really don't. But if they slip up, who's going to take advantage? Tennessee? I mean, like, is Tennessee going to have one loss in the SEC? Probably not. I mean, they play Georgia and Alabama and Florida, who they never seem to be able to get past. Would it be Tennessee? Doesn't seem like it. Could it be the Gators? Well, that's asking a lot of Florida after firing their entire coaching staff and starting over. That doesn't feel like that would be the case either. So the margin of error to me so far is pretty wide. I mean, like South Carolina has to play the Dogs. They also play Texas A&M. Those are two top 10 teams. I think the problem that you could get into with if you're Georgia is, let's just say you lose a game. It better be the right game. And we've seen through the years that Kirby's done a very good job of losing the right game. Mark Richt lost the wrong game. Let me explain what I mean by that. In 2004, Mark Richt and company lost the wrong game. They lost to Tennessee. Had they lost to LSU instead of Tennessee, they'd have still played for the SEC championship uh, later in the season. Uh, in 2007, Georgia lost the wrong game, which was, again, Tennessee or South Carolina. You win either of those games, and you're playing for the national championship in the SEC championship, or at least a right to play for the SEC championship, or the national championship and the SEC championship. A lot of championships. In 2012, they lost the wrong game. It did happen to be the de facto national championship against Alabama, but that was the wrong game to lose. With Kirby, we've not seen him lose the wrong game, and we've seen him lose a game in every single season, right? Let's just go through it real quick. Obviously, in 2016, they were not going to play for a national championship. 2017, in the regular season, they lose and get blown out by Auburn. Doesn't matter, right? Because a couple weeks later, they blow Auburn out, go on to play for the national championship in the college football playoff. 2018, they lose to LSU. Doesn't prevent them from winning the SEC. Doesn't prevent them from winning the national championship. They eventually lose to Alabama and Texas, too. They don't lose the wrong game, though. Nothing prevents them from going on to challenge for the championship. 2019, they lose to South Carolina. I said it that day. People don't like to hear it when you lose, but which game do you lose? Does it matter which game you lost? For instance, back to Mark Richt's time. In 2014, they beat Missouri but lose to South Carolina. Just like a bizarre game. They lose to Florida. You win either of those two games and you go on. Uh, I just don't even know. They beat the division champion that year and they didn't play for the championship. 2020, not the same situation. They did lose the wrong game, which was the Florida game. Losing to Alabama didn't matter, but losing to Florida did. As it turns out, I think losing to Florida was the wrong one to lose. Had they beaten the Gators, they would have gone on to win the East. So the Alabama game did matter, but not the same way. And then obviously in 2021, Georgia loses to Alabama in the SEC championship. One of the most built up SEC championships in the history of the game. When Georgia and Alabama play in that game means a lot. I mean, that game has meant a lot for those two teams because they've been every single time they played one another in Atlanta, someone has gone on. Let me make sure I say this right now. Not every time. Not every time, because in 18 they did not go on to win the national championship, the winner of that game. Well, or the two that played in that game, but in 2012, 2017, 2020, excuse me, 2012, 2017, and 2021, three of the four times they played, a national champion has emerged from that game, whether they won it or lost it. And then obviously, I was talking about this a second ago. In 2021, Georgia loses to Alabama in a game that doesn't. I mean, the only thing it cost him was a Southeastern Conference championship. Normally, that's a big deal. I mean, Georgia's only won 12 SEC championships, second best all time. But not enough to matter that much when you win the national championship 6 weeks later, something like that. What is the margin of error? Which game is the allowable loss, if you want to call it that? Is it at South Carolina? Is it at Missouri? I mean, I don't think they're losing either of those games, but okay. Is it the Oregon game? First game of the season? A non-conference game? To me, that's a challenging game for Oregon. It might be it might be the toughest game Georgia plays. I don't know. But you got that game. November is daunting to me, if you want to call it that. It looks like the most challenging month of the schedule. October 29th is not November, but you play Florida down there, and then you've got a stretch of three games where Georgia could lose one of these three games, or they could lose each of these games. I should say they won't. They probably won't lose any of them, but they could. Tennessee and Athens, challenging. At Mississippi State, challenging enough. I mean, we'll just see. And then at Kentucky, which there's just no telling what will happen. I mean, it's a tough place to play, I'm telling you. And it's a place that Georgia has won more often than they've not in my lifetime. That's clear. But it's never seemingly an easy game. And with Kentucky playing the way they have lately, that's probably going to be the game that determines the East. Kentucky, it's hard to talk about Kentucky this way because people don't take them seriously. But there's no game on their schedule they can't win. I mean, they play Miami of Ohio, they play at Florida. That's going to be challenging. They should win that game though. Youngstown State, Northern Illinois, at Ole Miss, and Georgia. Those are their toughest two games. They play at Ole Miss. They'll probably lose that game, but I don't know that for sure. They play Carolina at home. They play Mississippi State at home. They could lose either of those games. They probably won't. They play at Tennessee. That's going to be tough for them. But, they may or may not be favored. I don't know. And at Missouri, they should win that game. Vanderbilt, they should win that game. And you got the Georgia game, second to last game of the season. They should kill Louisville. Yeah, I mean, they can win all the games they play. I mean, they can beat Georgia up there. Sure. Going to be a cold weather game. So what is Georgia's margin of error? To me, it seems like they can lose in the regular season so long as it's not the wrong game. Kentucky plays. Get a load of this. Now, this is pretty amazing. They play Miami at home, Youngstown State at home, Northern Illinois at home, Carolina, Mississippi State, Vandy, Georgia, and Louisville. They play 8 home games, y'all. That is nuts. That is some serious scheduling by the Cats. A season ago, they didn't play that many at home because they had to play at Louisville. But they played Louisiana Monroe, Missouri, Chattanooga, Florida, LSU, Tennessee, and New Mexico State at home. They played 7 home games. That's much more reasonable. The difference between I'm telling you right now, the difference between 7 and 6 home games is not an insignificant thing for Georgia. You know, this season they will play at home a fair amount. They finally get Georgia Tech in Athens. They play Samford, Kent State, Auburn, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, and Georgia Tech. They play 6 home games, but we all know the Oregon game. That's basically a home game. That's 7, and then they play Florida and Jacksonville. So they only play 4 true road games. That's rare for Georgia too. Play at Carolina, at Mizzou, at State, and at Kentucky. That State Kentucky back-to-back weekend is tough, but that's probably their margin of error right there. That November stretch there, just before how Thanksgiving and the World Cup gets going, that's where I'd pay attention if I were a Georgia player and a Georgia fan. Of course, the players should be getting ready for Oregon right now, but that's the margin of error as I see it. I will be at Red Zone this Friday and Saturday coming up. G-Day Saturday at Red Zone, noon to close on Friday. Come hang out. 9 o'clock until noon on Saturday. I might be there after the fact too. We'll see. I want to see you at Red Zone. Will you be there? We'll see you on Clayton Street.